Imagine getting pulled over by the cops for no reason. Now, picture that stop turning into something way worse, a situation where power gets abused way beyond limits. But here's the kicker. The officers had no idea who they were messing with. What started as a simple stop quickly turned into a nightmare for an innocent woman. What those cops did was downright awful. But what happened next? Well, it changed everything. An unexpected twist, a real-life shocker, left those guys in a mess they couldn't escape. In the end, justice came the way they never saw coming. Want to know how it all went down? Stick around till the end. It was a quiet night. Only a few lights were on in the modest homes of that remote neighborhood. The dirt roads were empty, and the only sounds were the crickets chirping and the faint hum of a TV coming from one of the houses. This wasn't the kind of place people just passed through. It was locals only. But that night, a police cruiser cut through the darkness, its high beams lighting up the road. Inside the car were two cops, cruising slowly, scanning their surroundings. They weren't there because of a call or anything suspicious. Honestly, it felt more like they were just killing time, trying to escape the monotony of their usual patrols. One of them, looking bored out of his mind, sighed and said, "Man, this place is a ghost town. Nothing exciting ever happens here." The other cop, who was driving, chuckled sarcastically, but then his eyes locked onto something up ahead. A woman was walking alone, calm and unhurried, like she was just heading home. She looked confident, her hair tied back, a bag slung over her shoulder. The two cops exchanged a glance and smirked. No words were needed. The driver slowed down, pulling up beside her. They weren't there to protect her or make sure she was safe. Nope, they had something else in mind. The car crept closer, and one of the officers rolled down the window. He called out to her in a tone that tried to sound official but came off as fake. "Evening, ma'am. Mind stopping for a sec? We've got a few questions." The woman paused, surprised but not scared. She eyed the two uniformed men suspiciously. She knew she hadn't done anything wrong, so why were they stopping her? She took a deep breath and stayed put, steady on her feet. But she had no idea what these guys were about to do. The woman hesitated before answering. Her heart was racing, but she kept her cool. She knew she hadn't broken any laws, so there was nothing to worry about, right? The two officers slowly stepped out of the car, acting like they were dealing with some dangerous criminal, but their expressions, totally different. This wasn't the look of cops doing their job. It was predatory. "Hand over your ID, please," one of the officers said, crossing his arms. His voice was cold and authoritative, but there was a hint of sarcasm in it. The woman frowned. "What did I do? Why are you stopping me?" The other cop let out a quiet laugh. "Just routine. You look suspicious." A chill ran down her spine. Suspicious? Why? Because she was alone? Or because she was black? Anger started bubbling up inside her, but she stayed calm. "I'm just going home. I didn't do anything wrong." The cop who'd asked for her ID took a step forward, narrowing his eyes. "We'll decide that. Just cooperate and this'll go smooth." The woman reached for her bag to grab her ID, but before she could, she felt a hand grab her arm. She flinched at the touch, shocked by how unprofessional this was. "Gotta do a quick pat down, you know how it is," the cop said with a sideways grin. The woman stepped back, yanking her arm free. "You don't have a reason to do this. You can't just..." The other cop moved in from behind, blocking any chance of her escaping. His smirk was gone now, replaced by a glare. "Since when do we need a reason?" The tension in the air was thick. Her heart pounded as she looked around, but the street was empty. No one was coming to help her. "It's gonna get worse for you if you don't cooperate," the cop beside her whispered, leaning in way too close. The woman felt her fear turning into rage. This was a straight-up abuse of power, crossing every line. But what she didn't know was that justice was about to show up in a way these cops could never have imagined. She tried to step back, but she bumped into the chest of the cop behind her. Her heart was racing now, not from fear, but from the anger boiling inside her. "I said, don't touch me," she snapped, her voice strong even though she was shaking. The cop in front of her let out a sarcastic laugh. "Ooh, tough girl, huh?" He leaned in, inspecting her. "We're just looking out for your safety." The other cop moved closer, his breath hot on her ear as he whispered, "Or maybe you've got something to hide?" The woman whipped around to face him, her eyes blazing with anger. "You have no right to do this. I know the law. This is abuse of power." The two cops exchanged a look and started laughing, a low, nasty laugh full of contempt. "The law?" the taller cop said, crossing his arms. "You really think anyone cares about that out here?" The woman felt her blood boiling. These guys were so sure they could do whatever they wanted, like she was just another nobody who didn't matter. But they had no idea who she was. Or more importantly, who her father was. Just then, a car pulled up. It wasn't a cop car. It was a sleek, expensive luxury vehicle. It came to a sudden stop a few feet away. The two cops turned to see who it was, but the woman already knew. For the first time that night, a small smile crept onto her lips. Justice had arrived. The engine cut off, and the street fell silent. The car door opened slowly, and out stepped a tall man in a sharp suit. He moved with confidence, his gaze cold and calculating. He had this natural authority that made the two cops exchange nervous glances. The woman took a deep breath, feeling a wave of relief. Her father was here. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, taking the scene, his daughter and the two cops. His face was calm, but his eyes, they were burning with anger. The two cops, who'd been all cocky just seconds ago, started to sweat. There was something about this guy that made them uneasy. "Is there a problem here?" the man asked, his voice low but commanding. The two cops exchanged glances before the taller one spoke up, trying to sound confident. "No, sir, just a routine check." This woman was acting suspicious. The man raised an eyebrow. The woman clenched her jaw, holding back her anger, but her father stayed calm. He reached into his suit pocket, pulled out a card, and held it up for the cops to see. Their eyes widened, and the street went dead silent. "Judge," one of them muttered, his face turning pale. The other cops swallowed hard, like he just realized how deep they were in. The judge took a step forward, his presence overwhelming. "Let me ask you something," he said, his voice sharp. "How exactly was my daughter acting suspicious?" The cops stammered, their arrogance gone. Panic was setting in. They weren't dealing with some random woman. They were dealing with a judge's daughter, and there was no way out of this. The judge let the silence hang for a moment, watching them squirm. He knew exactly what to do, but he wanted to see how far they'd dig themselves in. The first cop tried to speak, but the judge cut him off. "You think this ends with an apology?" he said, his voice icy. The woman beside him felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Her father was here to protect her, and more than that, he was here to make sure these guys paid for what they'd done. The second cop looked terrified, but the first one tried to stand his ground. "We didn't mean any harm, sir. It was just a routine stop. We didn't know." The judge cut him off again. "There's no excuse. What you did was an abuse of power, and there will be consequences." The cop stood there, speechless. The judge turned to his daughter and placed a hand on her shoulder. He didn't need to say anything else. She knew justice was about to be served. The woman looked at the cops with steady eyes, finally feeling safe. The man beside her was here to fix the system's mistakes, and this was going to change everything. The street was silent. The cops were clearly shaken, unsure what to do. The first one tried to explain himself, but his voice was trembling. "Sir, we didn't mean to cause trouble. It was just a routine stop. We didn't know who she was." The judge didn't budge. "Ignorance is an excuse. You'll face the consequences of your actions, not just for her, but for everyone else you've done this to." The cops had nothing to say. The judge gave his daughter a nod, and they turned to leave. The lesson had been learned, and from that moment on, things would never be the same. After the judge's intervention, the two cops were immediately suspended, and an internal investigation was launched. The woman's name was cleared, and the judge made sure no abuse of power would go unpunished. Justice had found its way,